Hi, this is Ann with Fiber Designs by Ann, and we're doing textile coloring part 4, and we're using an eyedropper and a few other little tools. I'm on a piece of plexiglass, which I usually paint on, but I put plastic wrap on it. I have a piece of fabric that will fit on it. And I'm starting, instead of using the droppers, I have the end of a can here, so I put a can of paint. So I put a little water in it, shook it up, just to sort of use what was left in that can. Now I'm using, the Jacquard Textile Color is what I was using. And now for this turquoise color, I'm using SetaSilk. And it has its own kind of dropper, so I'm just going to use that. And even though they look a lot alike, they're not. I'm by a window today, so if the color gets lighter and darker, I apologize for that. It's because it's the clouds and the sun are crossing each other's paths. Now I'm putting a little bit of yellow Jacquard Textile Color in a container, and I will be putting some water. Now I don't want this as thin as a wash. In my other videos you've learned how to do a wash, but in this one I want it a little bit more like the regular paint, just enough to put and squeeze out of a dropper. So it's not thick anymore, but it's not as thin as a wash. And I decided to mist this to move it. It wasn't necessary and it didn't make a really big difference, but that's what's fun about this. You can just try just about anything and see what kind of results you get. And I'm going to tilt it just to move it a little bit more. When you think about your colors, think about colors that when mixed will make another nice color, unless you want like a brown or earthy kind of dirty kind of muddy kind of color. So I'm using the yellow and the blues, and of course I'll be getting some green. There's a bubble, and there's no reason to even think about the bubbles, but for some reason I wanted to squish it. There's no problem having the bubbles. Sometimes if they stay and they go on the fabric, it's a very cool effect, but usually they burst before the fabric hits them. So I'm just going around with this yellow, putting it wherever I feel like it. This is really abstract. You can try and do a drawing if you want with the dropper, but chances are it won't be there in the end. But I'm okay with that. Now I mixed the white the same as I did the yellow. And I really like what white does on some of these fabrics. Then I'm going to take a dry brush and just drag it across. The plastic will resist some of the paint, and that's just fine with this technique. I probably don't want to mix it. You probably don't want to mix it too much. And so where it resists, I can either leave it like I am doing here, or I could have filled it in with more dropper colors from the eyedropper. So I'm leaving it. I'm just letting it go. The fabric initially soak up, and then I'm going to take this foam brush and drag it across to just sort of mush the paint a little into the fabric a little bit more. And if you know me, you know I can't stand to not put my hands in it, so I'm using my fingers. Then I'll go ahead and use what I have in the dropper and just fill in some places. Sometimes it's hard to stop. But since I'm doing this, I do want the color all the way out to the edge. So if I can move it or add more, I'll do that to the edges. And then I'm back with the white. I love what the white does. It blooms. Now, when it dries, it may not show up like this. But I love what it initially does. So I just sort of look the piece over and decide if I want to add some more, and I did, of course. I slid that onto a cardboard so that it would maybe dry a little bit faster, since cardboard is a little more breathable. Now the next piece I decided to do on foil. I'm using fluorescent red and a fluorescent violet. The fluorescent red looks like hot pink. I'm also using the white that I had left from the other paint job. So I'm using this foil, and I don't think I would do it again. This is the first time I used foil, And I would have probably liked it better if I had really made more texture on the foil itself, but I kind of smoothed it out. It just, I can't even describe it. I would say try it if you've never done this. You might like what you get. And I like the results, but I didn't really like painting on the foil, dropping the paint on the foil. And I had an idea in my head. I don't remember what it was now because it went totally out the window, as pieces do with this technique. You have to just sort of be open to whatever happens, go with it. You'll end up with some really neat fabric when you're finished. So I was first just gonna, I don't know what I was gonna do with some lines, and it was the foil. It just was holding the paint differently than the plastic acrylic sheet and the plastic wrap. So then I just started just putting it down any old which way. I taped the foil just so it would sort of hold still, but you can see that when I wanted to tilt it, I ended up untaping it. And it was on, it did have it on my piece of plexiglass, but that really wasn't necessary. Now I have what is labeled fluorescent red. It just looks like hot pink to me. And I'm just going to fill in some places where there's not any paint, let it mush together, run together. And I'm just trying to fill it in. Some of the shapes look a little like leaves, and I kind of like that idea, but again, this is going to be different when I lay the fabric on it. And the wrinkles that are in the foil will probably transfer onto the fabric, which I'm cool with that too. So I'm just really covering space. And again, I had a little white left from the other piece, so I used that. Instead of running the brush across it, I decided that I would go ahead and lay the fabric into it. And kind of see those shapes that looked a little like leaves. And then I ran the brush across it. And it may leave some lines. Not sure in the end if they show very much. I'm good with that. I think you could do this in just blues and a little white. Use the brush and make a sky fabric pretty easily. That was very thinned out paint there. You can see that is a wash, and see how very light it is, and that's really not great for this technique. I got carried away with the white. I couldn't help myself. It's just too much fun. So I'll show a little bit here, but I went on and did even more, tried a few other things. Here I'm pulling a craft stick through. I made a bubble at the end. Again, just be open to whatever happens. It's abstract. It's fabric that you can use in a lot of different ways. And I start seeing flowers as I'm doing this, so I start pulling the design into flower shapes. I'll cut a lot of this out so you don't have to watch all of it, but it was really fun, and I did have to just say stop myself at some point. But any other white places around the edge, I took the other colors and filled them in. So you can kind of draw with the eyedropper. So when I finally stopped, I let the two pieces dry overnight, and then I peeled them off. The foil piece was very interesting on the back. It felt really shiny. I've never had fabric do that to me. It was just different. Now I will rinse these pieces. I will heat set them first. Dry hot iron. Be sure and use a surface that won't get damaged from the paint, because some paint may be released. And then I'll rinse them, and then I'll press them again. It's just the way I like to do it to get any extra paint out. So I have to decide which side I like best. And I like both sides on this. I'm peeling up it looks more blue than this in real life. I really like the back on this one. I hope if you like this technique, you'll give it a try. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you will. And be sure and tap the bell to get notifications for my most recent videos. This has been Ann. Thanks a lot for watching.